All right. So the question a lot of times I like thinking about for people is, why not you, right? Why can't you be successful? I think about 80 to 90% of what we do in life really is mindset. Some of it is actually the mechanics of how to do certain things. But a lot of times it's just we don't believe we can do it. We don't believe that it's possible for us to replace our income with passive income. We don't believe it's possible to raise money for real estate or do big deals. And so my friend Darin Batchelder is here with me today. He actually literally wrote the book called "Why Not You: How to Change Your Mindset and Reach Your Dreams," and it just came out a couple months ago. And so I just want to give a quick intro to him. He has over 4,200 multifamily units as a GP, KP, or LP, comprising 16 properties and one retail center. So, Darin, how are you today? Welcome. So excited to have you today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Bronson. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to jump into it, man. I'm a huge mindset guy. I just actually recently spoke with Rod Khleif, and we talked. He's a big mindset guy as well. I
Absolutely.
went to a Tony Robbins event recently. So let's talk for a minute. Just for you, I want to weave in, some mindset stuff, and however you can kind of weave that into some of the questions I ask you too. But how did you get started with real estate, and maybe, yeah, what was the kind of the mindset that it took for you to kind of get to where you're at now, I guess?
So I'm an entrepreneur. I've been a business owner since 2007. Prior to that, I was in the corporate world. And 2002, I kind of got into the loan trading business. So trading large loan portfolios, residential, multifamily, commercial real estate loans, and started my company 2007. That gave me flexibility of time. But I heard from people over and over and over again that I talked to bank presidents and chief lending officers, and they all kept telling me about the performance of multifamily loans. They loved multifamily loans, both in up markets and in recessionary times, because people are going to pay for food and they're going to pay for where they live. And so I heard that over and over and over again, but I didn't take action until about 4 years ago. So I'm 52. And so about 4 years ago, I said, I'm going to get involved. And my wife and I bought a duplex, and I was scared to do it. I had the capital, it wasn't that, but I think that our mindset is such that we're so afraid to lose, and we're so afraid that something is going to go wrong, especially with things that we haven't done before. So I just pushed through it. And then once I signed up for that duplex, then I was like, look, I need to go bigger. And I went searching for a way to go bigger. And, now I'm in a lot of different deals. I started a podcast, a YouTube channel, wrote a book. Like, I never thought I could do any of this stuff. It's just, you do one thing and then that motivates you to get uncomfortable and go after the next thing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I think in life, I was thinking about this. This came up in conversation recently about how, challenges happen. And, when we look at failure, not as failure, but as something we can, it's a seminar, we can learn from, we can grow from it. Everything can build, help us get where we want to go. But I love that you, like you said, you were 48 and you just, I'm just going to do this. And you bought a duplex. And then from there, it's just been like, wow, a duplex to now 4,276 units. That's crazy. So how did you, obviously you weren't thinking linearly, like, okay, I'm going to get a duplex here and I'm going to go for like something just kind of took off. But how did that kind of evolve for you, where you not only saw it, you got into it? And when was it like the light bulb went on for you of like, oh, this is it. This is my future.
So, I mean, a few things there. One, I sit in church and I think like about, you hear the pastor over and over and over again talk about service. And I didn't really have the passion to go out and, pick up garbage and do, other community things. But then when I got involved with this, the first part was a duplex, but then the next thing that we did was I was a lead syndicator on a 76 unit townhome community. We had 44 limited partners, and we bought that deal in 2018 and we sold it March of 2022. And, in a little over 3 years, we had like a 47% annualized return. I mean, so
Amazing.
Yeah. And so I look at like, okay, well, God put me on this earth and he gave me certain skills, and I'm able to help grow the wealth and educate other people. on other ways to grow their wealth. And that is what's given me passion. So that's why I started the podcast. That's why I wrote the book. There's so many people that are afraid to take the next step. And so, I believe, why not you?
Yeah. And I love that. I love that because I think for people that I meet like yourself that are just very successful people, it always starts with a why, right? Simon Sinek has that book, Start with Why. And if you start with, the reason something, and it always comes down to contribution. It comes down to how can I give myself in a way that's it both is it's a need, right? There's a need in the world for this. And also there's a passion that I have and I'm pretty good at this, right? I mean, I'm not the best trash collector in the world. I'm not really excited about that, or maybe there is
Right.
a need for it, right? But maybe it's not for me. But finding that area where those things combine, and what happens is, it's just this fire because you get involved in it, it gets exciting, and it's like a drug. You get so excited that you get this high off of it because you're actually helping people. It's making a difference. People see it, and it's something that just feels very different than just, oh, this person is just doing this because they have to. I'm doing it because I want to do this. I really want to serve and help people, and that comes across. That's very, very apparent what you're doing, Darin, which I think is awesome. Let me ask you this: what are some of the things that you took from your prior career? And obviously, it kind of brought you into multifamily because you learned about it there. But what are some of like the skill sets that you found that maybe you developed even before you knew that you were developing them that have been helpful in what you're doing now in multifamily?
Yeah. The multifamily investing world is a very relationship driven business, and it's a high dollar investment, right? So I've been dealing in that world for many, many years. Build know, like, and trust, build that know, like, and trust with other people. And, so I was trading loan portfolios, 50 million, 100 million, 200 million. And, bank presidents and chief lending officers, they have to trust you as the individual and also the company that you're representing. So that skill set, I think, has transitioned well, because in this business, everybody talks about it being a team sport. You have you partner up with other partners. You have to build relationships to do that. You have different vendor relationships, whether it be finance companies or property management companies and brokers. And then you have a ton of limited partners that are going to invest in the deal, and they need to trust you and build a relationship with you. So I think that relationship building definitely helped me coming along.
Yeah, no, that's huge. It's interesting. When I first started, I didn't know if I was going to be somebody who finds deals or is going to be somebody that raises money. Usually, that's kind of one of the two ways people start. And so I thought I was going to be finding deals. So I would just analyze a ton of deals, which is really helpful. It was very valuable to learn and know how to underwrite stuff. But I look back now, and I'm like, man, but I had 10 years of sales experience, and I was really good at that.
Right.
So sometimes it's challenging for people to kind of find themselves in the right seat there. So for you, when you look back, and I want you to talk a little bit about your book, the Why Not You. When I hear that, I haven't read the book yet. I want to read the book,
Sure.
but a lot of times it's we're handed down these set of beliefs from just prior experiences about who we are. The typically that happened when we were a kid. That, oh, I'm this type of person, or I can't do this, or I'm from this kind of family. How did you kind of work through some of those mindset things to help you feel like, either I'm worthy of this, or I'm able to do this, or it's something that this actually can happen?
Yeah, I think one thing is everybody has some kind of experience in their past where they were scared and they took action anyway. And it could be something small. It could be like, look, I was afraid to walk into my classroom, and I walked into the classroom and, sat down next to somebody, and I was scared to talk to them. And then we became best friends,
Yeah.
So looking at past experiences and when something worked out, and then using that as a springboard to take a chance on the next thing.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. I love that. Yeah, it's basically the confidence of, I went through this challenge, and when you face another challenge, well, this is my first rodeo, right? I went through this really difficult thing, and I know that it's going to work out. I think too, your person of faith like me as well, just believing that, God's going to work everything together for good somehow, right? Even if
Right.
I don't understand it, somehow this can be used later in life or another thing. And some of the most difficult moments of my life have led to the times of most profound growth in ways that I couldn't even see at the time. I think that's something that's pretty cool.
That's the whole thing. It's like, if I could do it and you can do it, like literally
Yeah.
anybody can do it.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of taking. I never, ever, ever thought that when I bought that duplex, I'd be invested in a ton of deals. I'd start a podcast, YouTube channel, write a book. Like all that just happens. You do one thing and then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you get inspired to do the next.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what's amazing about life is life has this way, if you just step forward, I think sure the listeners as well can relate. There's just, in our lives, we stumble into a business or we just randomly meet our spouse or something happens and just life will happen. But over time, things compound. And so we get just the results of trying different things. And I'm a big one of, I call them low risk experiments, right? If it's like, oh, hey, this multifamily thing sounds interesting. Well, could I go to a real estate meetup and meet some
Right.
people? Could I go to a
I
conference?
was scared to do my
Yeah.
first meetup. I mean, that's just, it's silly
Yeah.
thinking about it now, right?
Totally. Well, I remember so this is for me, I used to go to meetups and I didn't do anything. I had one single family rental house and then something happened in my life where I decided, okay, I'm just going to go for it. I started buying single family houses. But there came a point where I learned about multifamily and I just was going to start a meetup. So I started a meetup with another person. I remember just being really nervous about getting up in front and leading this meetup, even though I've done the speaking before. It felt really
Right.
nervous. Now it's not even a thing. We do it all the time. It's no big deal. But at the time, there's this idea that when you get outside of your comfort zone, right? You have your comfort zone is here. And then, what's outside of that feels uncomfortable, but that's where the growth happens, right? If it's too far out, it can be a panic zone. If you're like,
Right.
oh my gosh, I'm on stage at the Oscars and I'm supposed to, give a speech or something that's totally uncomfortable for you, then maybe that's weird. But for you, what's something you wish you had known when you were younger? If you go back to your younger self and you're, 22 years old, what would you tell yourself?
Invest in real estate much earlier. Look, real estate, I don't know. I'm glad I've done it now, but I wish I did things a lot earlier. I mean, I knew that people made a lot of wealth and, with wealth gives you flexibility of your time, flexibility of, what you want to do, flexibility financially. And, I asked somebody recently, do you know anybody who's built, a lot of wealth just by saving, having a W-2 job and putting 10 to 20% away? And this was somebody that has done very well in his life. And he was like, I don't know one person.
Yeah.
He's like, it's either been real estate or stock options or started a company and built a company and then had a big exit, so that, I knew about real estate, but I think I was like a lot of people. I was just scared to take a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it. I have an investor who invested recently in our ATM fund and he's got a financial guy, like a financial advisor. And this guy, he forwarded me one of his emails. He's like, oh, I just strongly discourage you from blah, 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 because of this and whatever. And I'm thinking I just remember responding to it and thinking this guy, I mean, he's a very smart guy. I'm sure he had, a couple of credentials, certified financial planner or something else, whatever. I'm like, okay, well, he's a smart guy, obviously, but he's so bought into this belief system that, I said that either this guy, I said to my investor, I said, well, either this person is not wealthy or they made money through some other means or through their business or something like that. Because there's nobody gets wealthy by doing this the Wall Street way. Oh, you just put it in here and you just put it out, you just do all this. It's the best investment we make, I think, really is in our own education. For you, what was the point that you, like you said, you bought the duplex, but what are some kind of milestones along the way that got you from 2 units to 4,200 of just was it just by the doing or was it more by kind of the reading and learning and the experience and kind of what were some of the kind of the, I don't know, landmarks along the way there, I guess?
Yeah. All of the above, but, surrounding yourself with other people that have done it, so I joined a multifamily mentorship group in Dallas. And then all of a sudden I was in a room and it was one person after the other. I have 3 properties, 100 units plus. I have 200 units. I'm like, holy cow, I can't believe I'm around all these people that, and I'm like, they're smart people, but they're not that smart. They just They
They're
just
not
followed,
geniuses, right?
right. They just followed what other people did. And so I'm like, well, I'm not going to recreate the wheel. I'm just going to ask them how they did it and then follow their lead, you know? And
Yeah.
I also met my first business partner at that group who had significant experience. And that really helped because, getting into the 76 unit deal, I was the lead sponsor and I was responsible for the day to day, but I had a partner that had experience that I could always lean on. Hey, this is going on. What, I think we should do this, but what do you think? And it's nice having somebody that's already been there.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's a quote this comes up all the time, but it's just the fastest way to grow is through surrounding yourself with people that are where you want to be. There's that quote by Jim Rohn that says you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I've watched, as I lost 30 pounds, 5 or 6 years ago.
Congratulations. That's
Thanks. I
awesome.
kept it off, which has been great.
Fantastic.
I've my 20x my net worth. I mean, there's all kinds of things that have happened, but a lot of it's just really being in the right room. So sometimes you have to pay, like you paid to be in that room.
Right.
And people think, man, I don't want to pay 10, 20, 30K to be in a
Right.
room with people, but you don't realize like just being where the norm is. I've got 5, 10, 15, 20 properties or this many thousands of units, like that's going to have an impact on you.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to I look back on my journey. I'm just like, how did I, like, same as you, like, it was the same about 4 years ago. Like, how did I get here? How did it happen? And it just happened through meeting the right people, looking at what's in front, taking action. If you don't take action, obviously you won't get there.
That's
But
huge.
but a lot of it's just like the mindset of just like continually looking at challenges and being like, okay, well, how do I figure this out? And with your network, you can call your network. You can be like, hey, I can
Right.
call a mentor, I can call a friend, I can call somebody who's in a group and say, hey, well, this is the challenge I'm facing. How would you deal with this? And it's all stuff that's like, it's not rocket science, right? Like you said, these people are not that smart. They just are in the right rooms.
Smart people,
And
good people, but you are too, right?
yeah,
And the other thing is, look, 4 years ago when you started, you couldn't see all the other stuff.
yeah,
So I'd say, look, focus on just doing the next step. Focus on, if it's your first deal, get your first deal. And
yeah,
then you'll all of a sudden your mind will be expanded, and then you'll think about, okay, what do I want to do next? And because you could never see that you would grow your wealth that much. You would lose 30 pounds. You would be
yeah,
in a room with all these people. You'd have a podcast. You be teaching others how to do it. That's another thing is most people, if they're listening to your podcast and they're trying to seek advice from you, how'd you get your first deal? They're thinking about themselves,
yeah,
right? And that's not a bad
yeah,
thing. Like that's the way I was too. And from the beginning, I was trying to build wealth for myself and my family. But then you can't even see it. Later on, people come to you
yeah.
in your network and say, how'd you do it?
Yeah, yeah, it's kind of it's kind of amazing to me. I get messages all the time now on LinkedIn and Facebook and from events and oh, they always want to know how this go or how the whatever. And I just think, well, just kind of follow the path. I mean, now I think for a lot of people that are passive investors, this show is the Mailbox Money Show, which is really dedicated to passive investors. And for a lot of people, we get stuck in analysis paralysis. Like we just look at deal and we don't know how to take the action. But for someone who has, a net worth of over 2 million or over 1 million, putting 50 to 100K in a deal is a step, but it's not it's not like oh, okay, I die if this doesn't work out. It's something that you're going to learn regardless. And most of the time it'll go fine. I think for a lot of people, it just comes down to taking an action. And so taking an action step. And so once those action steps start happening, I think your evidence of this as well is that they compound, right? You kind of go further and you do like, oh, wow, this door opens up and I met this person and now I'm doing this. And, I'm doing self-storage or I'm doing something, you're doing other things kind of around it. And it's stuff that you didn't necessarily see at all coming in.
Exactly. And that guy that put 100,000, he's got a $2 million net worth. I just had somebody, I was in a conversation with somebody that was giving an example of a passive investor that they worked with that allocated some money over. Okay. They had 20 plus returns in the multifamily space and they, I don't know, turned it in 2 or 3 years. So maybe they had 100,000 turned into 175,000 or something like that in 2 years. But in addition to that, which I really hadn't thought about before, he's like, that money would have been in the stock market and I would have been down, 25, 30%. So that 25-30% plus the gains is the true differential.
Yeah. Yeah. It's to me, I used to be a registered investment advisor. It was a side hustle I did while I was doing my medical sales job. And for a few years I did it. And after a while, I just really couldn't do it like the normal traditional stocks, bonds kind of thing. Cause I just realized this is really a strategy that we've been taught is very traditional. We've been taught because Wall Street spends billions of dollars teaching us that this is acceptable, but yet, it can go down by 30 to 50% in 12 months. And it's happened multiple times over the years. And yet we call that traditional, and we call real assets that are physical, like property. Oh, these are alternative investment. It's like the most backwards thing to me in the world. But again, we're taught that this is a safe traditional investment, use a 60-40 bond, stock bond mix. And if you'd use that strategy, there's a guy named Chris Cole who basically studied this. And he said, if you'd use the 60-40 strategy of 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds over the last 100 years, you would have gone broke 4 times just because of 3 times. You would have gone broke 3 times. And so it's crazy how we're just taught things that aren't true. And so when we start exploring, getting new things, it's like, until we might meet somebody who is a real estate investor, who is a syndicator, who is somebody who has left their job through passive income, it just sounds like this pie in the sky idea, right?
It does sound like pie in the sky. It's also, I think that terminology scares a lot of people.
Yeah.
The word syndication, I think, could be intimidating. And all it is a group of people buying a larger asset that they couldn't buy on their own. Private equity, alternative assets, capital stack, all those. It sounds so. Oh, that's for other people. That's so complex. But they're really, if you talk to the right people, it's really simplified. Private equity and alternative assets, they're just non-public investments.
Yeah, totally. Robert Kiyosaki says this. He says that the difference between the rich and the poor is mostly the vocabulary that they use, right? So just learning the words, learning to speak the language. And every industry has its own language, right? If you're like in engineering, use Six Sigma and other sorts of terms in there. If you're in sales, use certain terms or whatever industry it is. And so same with real estate or investing, or in terms like an internal rate of return or cash on cash return. I mean, it's important that as investors, as passive investors, you educate yourself on that. You understand how that deal works. Now, Warren Buffett, one of the best investors of all time, says we don't invest in anything we don't understand. So it's important that we understand what we're investing in as investors. I wanted to ask you, shift gears here for a minute, but ask you a little bit more about what you're seeing right now in the multifamily space, Darin. I know there's interest rates are rising. The Fed has said they're at least we're recording this December of 2022, and rates are rising. What do you see? Do you see opportunity? Do you see fear? Do you see how are you managing kind of what you have? Are you in acquisition mode? Are you more in kind of just we're going to hold and see what we have? Are you selling? How are you approaching things right now?
So if you put people in buckets like, hey, I'm on the sidelines or I'm all in, I'm more in the middle. Like I'm going to keep buying. I don't have a crystal ball. I realize, look, we have an inverted yield curve. Typically that will cause a recession. But I also have in my head all these bank presidents and chief lending officers that have told me for years and years and years that multifamily has performed well, even during recessionary times. I saw it firsthand during COVID. Nobody could have planned for COVID. And all of a sudden being an owner and having people on TV say, you don't have to pay your rent. And I'm like, holy cow, crazy. What happens if people don't pay the rent? And every month we were cash flow positive. That showed me that this is an asset class that's resilient. It's, people are going to pay for food and then they're going to pay for shelter.
Yeah.
And so, I'm still a buyer. Look, and I know that with interest rates going up, there are challenges. Deals don't pencil like they used to. Sellers, have come down a little bit on price, but they, not necessarily to where every deal works. People that are in floating rate loans are seeing not only the interest expense, debt service go up every month, but also the lenders are requiring large reserves, to buy a future cap. So that's, impacting cash flow. Talking to investors are a lot more guarded, in terms of getting into new deals. And I'm finding that a lot of people that are raising capital for deals are having more difficult time raising capital. But for myself, I've seen the power of this asset class with leverage and, leverage of the loan, leverage of other people's money, leverage, and the tax efficiency. It's just crazy. So, I'm still in.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. I think, I really think looking back in a couple years, we'll say at the time right now, saying, man, I wish I had bought more real estate. I'd bought more multifamily. And the reason why is because when you buy, the buying price is fixed, but the interest rate can be adjusted later. The Fed has been raising rates since March of 2022. It typically is between 5 and 13 months. It's never been longer than 13 months that from the moment of the first raise until they start cutting rates again. So I think we're coming on, a year will be in March. So at some point that will shift. Americans have so much money on the sidelines right now that I think a lot of that's going to flood in, and then evaluations will go up. Debt will change. I think it will. It will look good, because I think, like you said, a recession is coming. I think they're going to shift, and I don't think they can keep rates as high as they are. But
yeah. So for the impact for listeners, I mean, in that scenario, say Bronson buys, a bunch of deals and interest rates are, 6-7%, it's now all of a sudden a year later, if the Fed starts dropping rates and then he can refinance at 5%, then all of a sudden that makes the cash flow so much better. And the deal and the performance looks so much better, but nobody could have, everyone says you get lucky, right? But like, it takes courage to buy. I talked to a guy today who he's had like 11 properties go full cycle. And he was kind of saying like, I have a lot of, look, I was in a good place at the right time. We had tailwinds, and I'm like, yeah, but when I remember seeing some of your deals come out and we didn't know.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. There's always, you get paid well for, I think Warren Buffett says this quote of like, you get paid well when there's uncertainty in the short term. Like we know in general that multifamily real estate, there's incredible demand for. There's a shortage of between 3 and 8 million apartment units. I mean, that's documented, that's studied by different groups. And, rents are going to continue to go up. Inflation and rents go hand in hand. So we know that it's going to be a good asset. It's just, we don't know exactly when things are going to pop, and we've had some big pops as well. We've had some properties that we bought we got one in Jacksonville, Florida for 27 million. And then 10 months later, it was worth 37 million. So we sold it, right? It was almost an 80-90% IRR to investors. It was crazy. That stuff happens, but we couldn't time that. That stuff will happen. But the only way you can do it is when you have your skin in the game and you're going for it, which I think is pretty cool. Well, we could talk a lot about economics, man. I want to definitely, maybe we should get you back on here again in the future, but what's one resource or, a book or an app or a website that's really helped you on your investing journey that you want to pass along to our audience?
I'm a big book reader. But when I'm thinking about the listeners and thinking about, I have a big heart for getting that first person to take get into their first deal. Yeah. I would say, look, there's an app that you can get on your phone called Meetup, MEETUP. And a lot of people know about it that are in the space, but people that don't, they don't know about it. Just put in the search field, apartment investing or multifamily investing, find a free meetup group in your area and go meet some people that have done it.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, that's huge. I mean, yeah, or even just a real estate meetup, right? Find somebody who's doing real estate, and if you're in a small area, but that's huge, man. That's awesome. Well, Darin, I appreciate you for coming on the show today. You have your podcast, which is called Darin Batchelder's Multifamily Real Estate Investing Show. You've got your book, Why Not You? How to Change Your Mindset and Reach Your Dreams, which is awesome. I want to pick up a copy of that. And how can people get in touch with you and what you're doing and learn about your deals?
Absolutely. So best way is my website, darinbatchelder.com. It's spelled DARINBATCHELDER.com. The book, Why Not You, can be found. You could search my name on Amazon. It's on there. And you could reach out to me on social media. I'm happy to help anybody out that's looking to get in the space.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you so much. Thanks for being here, and really excited for this show when it comes out so we can share it.
Awesome. Thanks, Bronson. Appreciate it.
Thanks. All right, so I love Darin's story because he started out not expecting to become a syndicator, really. He bought a duplex. Even that seemed really scary. But what happened is as he grew and as he took the next step became apparent. And it's very much, I think, like he was talking about, or I've heard people say, I think somebody was sharing this story about when you drive your car coast to coast at night, right? Maybe your lights light up 50 feet, but you can't see what's beyond there. But people have made it. People have made it from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa. So the idea is to continually just take the next step in front of you. And for many people, syndication, a lot of this stuff just sounds kind of crazy. Like, how do I go from I'm working my job, doing traditional finance, to get into something that's a little different like this? Now, to me, I would say more traditional and more safe and less risk in deals like this, like syndicated deals with a reputable sponsor where you have a track record and things like that. And so we have our investment club called the Bronson Equity Investor Club, and you can find it more on bronsonequity.com. And we have some things we're doing in multifamily, over 2,000 units, and we have our stuff outside of multifamily, ATM machines. We've got our stuff that, we have other things that are outside of the traditional stocks and bonds, which I think are really exciting. So something to look at. Another thing I took away from his story is just even the title of his book, Why Not You? And that in our lives, there's really no limits we have except for those we put on ourselves. Now, sure, we can have certain physical limitations or things we can't do, but a lot of times more of the limitations are things that we put on ourselves. Say, oh, I'm not that person. I'm not the person that does this. I'm not the person that speaks in front of the room. I'm not the person that becomes financially free or travels all the time. Well, why not? Like, what's the reason why not? So I'm actually going to go on and buy the book now because I think it sounds awesome. So if you have not reviewed this podcast or this show on iTunes, even if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd really appreciate a review. It really helps us to get great guests, even greater guests, and to helps us to reach more people, which is really our mission. And so I wanted to read one for you here. This is from Doug Money, which is awesome. I don't know if that's obviously not his real name. He said, I had Bronson on my podcast and he was great. He described boring real estate in a unique and interesting way, which that reminds me of the saying, that great investing should be like watching paint dry or like watching grass grow. So I hope your investing is exciting, but it's exciting because it's consistent and it allows you to live the life that you dream of. So friends, look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Mailbox Money.
You've been listening to the Mailbox Money Podcast. For more free resources, articles, and videos, go to bronsonequity.com. There you can download your copy of the special report, The Single Best Investment Strategy During and After a Pandemic. None of the information shared here is an offer to buy a specific investment, and this is for educational purposes only. Consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals and use your own common sense before making any investment decisions. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next time for more Mailbox Money.